Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we are jumping right into a landmark shift in American drug policy, the potential reclassification of marijuana.
So the White House is seriously considering a fundamental change to how marijuana is classified under federal law. And let's be clear, this isn't just a minor tweak. It's a massive decision that could completely reshape the multi-billion-dollar cannabis industry and, affect millions of Americans.
We're really talking about a complete redefinition here. The proposal on the table to move marijuana from the same legal box as heroin to the one that holds things like steroids and testosterone. Now, to get why that move is so incredibly significant, we first have to decode the system itself. Okay, so to really grasp what's at stake, you need to understand the framework at the heart of this whole debate. It's called the Controlled Substances Act, and it uses these drug schedules to classify everything. This system dictates it all, from criminal penalties to what kind of scientific research is even allowed. All right, so this right here is the absolute core of the proposed change. Right now, marijuana is a Schedule I drug. That puts it right alongside heroin. It means the federal government officially sees it as having a high potential for abuse, and this is the crucial part: no accepted medical use. The proposal would bump it down to Schedule III, next to substances like ketamine and testosterone. This new category recognizes that it does have an accepted medical purpose and a lower potential for abuse. And honestly, that distinction, well, it's the key to this entire debate.
So you might be asking, why this massive push for change and why now? Well, there are a few really powerful arguments that have pushed this whole issue right to the front of the line, and they basically point to some major inconsistencies in the current law.
45. Just let that number sink in. That is how many states have already legalized marijuana in some form, whether it's for medical or recreational use. So proponents are arguing that the federal government's super strict classification is just, well, it's completely out of touch with what's actually happening on the ground. It's creating this chaotic legal gray zone for everybody. And then, of course, there's the money. Reclassification would be a total game changer for cannabis businesses. Right now, they can't do normal banking, and because of a part of the tax code called 280E, they can't even deduct standard business expenses. It's wild. Changing the schedule could normalize the entire industry overnight. And as this quote shows, that tax money is already being used for real things, like fixing levees and building parks. And finally, maybe the most important argument of all is the medical and scientific one. Because it's a Schedule I drug, it's incredibly difficult for researchers to study marijuana's potential benefits and its risks. Reclassifying it would unlock so much vital research. And that's a point that even cautious people, like former President Trump, have admitted, saying they've heard about great things having to do with medical. But, that's only one side of the story. There's also a really strong case for hitting the brakes, one that's rooted in some pretty significant concerns about the real-world risks of having wider access to a much more potent product. Over 22,000. That's how many calls poison control centers got last year for cannabis incidents that involved kids. For critics, this is a huge red flag. They're pointing to the scary rise in children accidentally eating potent edibles. Things like gummies and brownies that look exactly like candy. And to be perfectly clear, this trend is explosive. We've gone from about 900 reported incidents back in 2009 to over 22,000 just last year. That is a staggering 20-fold increase. It's a public health crisis that's running right alongside legalization across the country. And it's not just about the numbers on a chart. Critics are pointing to real, tangible impacts on quality of life and public safety. As one person put it, you smell it in the streets. It's really powerful. It's causing car accidents. And that reflects a really common concern in places where cannabis use has become a lot more widespread and a lot more potent. And all of this leads to what is really the core concern for critics. They worry that reclassification isn't actually the final step. They fear this big federal shift will just create the impetus, as one put it, for full nationwide legalization before we even understand or deal with these growing risks. So with such powerful arguments on both sides, the path forward is, well, it's anything but clear. You've got this conflict between what states are doing and federal policy, and a clash between economic potential and public health risks. So what happens next? The crucial thing to remember is that this is not a done deal, not at all. While there's a recommendation on the table from health and justice officials, the final decision is up to the administration. It's left the whole country kind of holding its breath. And that leaves us right here with the central question of it all. Is reclassifying marijuana a necessary step forward? One that finally aligns federal law with science and what's happening in the states? Or does it open the door to peril by downplaying some very real risks to our health and safety? That is the multi-billion-dollar question as the entire country waits for a landmark decision.